everyone, again. I was live and then someone called me and then I don't know what happened and I'm really sorry about it. But if this is your first time, welcome. Thank you for joining me. If you were there for the first time, sorry about that. That was weird. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jasmine Kylene, and I think that maybe I'm getting a cold and that's why I sound like this. So forgive me. Hi, thank you for joining again. I got a call and then Instagram started acting weird and so I'm starting all over. I don't know how to make my phone not get calls while I go on IG Live. Is there a way to do that? Does anyone know how to do that? If you know how to do that, please tell me. But anyway, good thing I didn't get into the juice of it. In summary, what I was saying before was that because this is the last full moon of 2022, oh my God, before we go into 2023, it's very important to use this moon as an opportunity to reflect on what have you learned about yourself this past year, what have the experiences that you've gone through taught you about yourself, about your desires, about your truth, about what you will no longer tolerate. Let that inform the intention that you set during this last full moon of 2022. So I would really just, in any way that you can, do some sort of time travel. Maybe you want to go through your pictures from January 2022. That sounds so triggering. I don't even know who I was in January. But yeah, go through old journal entries, old tweets, old posts, old photos, and really look at who was I in January. What have the experiences and the shifts and the loss and the changes and the manifestations and the opportunities that have arrived into my life since then informed me about who I actually am, what my truth is, and what I desire moving into 2023, and incorporate that into whatever ritual that you do for tomorrow's moon. I would suggest working with it just because it's the last moon. It's also aspecting Mars in a really important way. So what I want to say is because this full moon is in Gemini. Gemini is obviously ruled by Mercury. It has a lot to do with our mind and our words and how we speak. And when it's aspecting Mars, there is this element of passion and aggression and even anger. So several things to say here. The first thing is that anger is one of the most important emotive senses that we can experience because it's really, really, really succinct and clear information about what we want, what we don't want, what we have the room and the patience and the tolerance to tolerate in our lives and what we don't. So let anything that is angering you, anything that's making you frustrated or pissed off or whatever is eliciting rage in your body be information about a boundary that needs to be set, something that needs to be said, something that needs to be shifted or changed in your life. Really let any anger that bubbles up right now be information and be expressed through the lens of love. I had a friend recently tell me the difference between walls versus boundaries, and recognizing the fact that while walls tend to separate, boundaries are upheld to deepen connection and to let the opportunity for deeper connection be conducive to sovereignty and to healing. So know that if you are given the opportunity to implement boundaries, make sure that they're coming from a place of love and not from a place of survival instinct and fight or flight. But I think it's important to know, a lot of astrologers are saying do not communicate at all this full moon. Make sure that you are just evading any situations that could be potentially triggering. And while I get that, I will say that sometimes having that anger and having that rage and having that passion is something that we should willingly work with. It's something that can actually aid us in actually voicing things that perhaps we were too cowardly to do before. So if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling passion, if that comes up over the next couple of days, let that be a conduit for change and for important conversations that are conducive to evolution. And yeah, just get clear on what are you mad about and why are you mad about it? And are you mad about it, or is your inner child mad about it? And how can you be your own parent? And how can you speak on the needs of not only future you or current you, but a past version of yourself that maybe didn't have the balls to speak on certain things that you need to speak on now? Clarity on what you're angry about, 110%. And let that clarity inform how powerful you will feel standing in the demanding of those boundaries and of your worth. You know what I mean? What I think is most important about this moon, though, because a lot of it is emphasis on our throat chakra, is how we are speaking over our lives conducive to our growth. So if you are working on your mindset surrounding abundance or surrounding calling in love, but then anytime you get around your friends, you're bro, niggas ain't shit. Or I'm in my broke era. Are your words actually honoring what you are trying to believe about yourself and the new beliefs and new ways of being that you want to step into. So really make sure that you're hyper aware of what you're calling and speaking over your life on a micro and also a very macro level, but like get really, 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 really clear on how am I speaking about myself to others, but most importantly, how am I speaking to myself about myself? There's this incredible astrologer. I never know how to say his name out loud, or their name. I'm actually not sure how they identify, but like the Illusion Aquarius. I'm not sure, but they posted something about this moon transit and they said, you cannot bully yourself into betterment. And I was like, that right there is what we need to talk about. Above all of the other ways in which you use your words to build your life, to build your reality, it's so important to know that our words are spells. So we want to be hyper aware of what am I saying about myself to others and to others about them, and how am I communicating? How am I using my throat chakra, my words? But you want to be most meticulous about how am I speaking to myself and how am I expressing myself to myself relative to my Mars energy, right? So because this is exactly conjoining Mars retrograde in Gemini, there is this element of like harshness and abrasiveness and like boundaries, anger, but you want to make sure that you are directing that towards things that deserve it and things that are conducive to that passion versus like, am I being mean to myself because I've been taught that that is how change happens? And am I being harsh to myself? Am I trying to bully myself into betterment in terms of like, if I see myself maybe falling on an old habit or doing something that I thought I've grown out of, or just, acting in a way that I don't deem evolutionary, am I mean to myself about it? Am I like giving myself shit about it? Or can I recognize the fact that like that is part of the journey? Can I give myself grace? Can I trust myself enough to be a safe space for myself? Because if you're not a safe space for yourself, no one can be, and you won't have any sort of filter for how you're supposed to be treated if you don't sort of explicitly mirror that to yourself, if that makes sense. I also need to note that I am running on like 4 hours of sleep throughout the week, so I may not be making sense. But overall, can you exemplify how you want to be treated by others by treating yourself in that way? Shame is not a sustainable conduit for change, period. Thank you for saying what I've been trying to say in a way that was so much more succinct and in one sentence. Exactly. Do not shame yourself. Give yourself grace. Give yourself compassion. Really be hyper aware of your inner dialogue. And thank you so much. Ari, I love you. But yeah, be hyper aware of your inner dialogue and make sure that it's kind and that it's gentle. And I think because we're working with Mars as well as Gemini here, like see yourself as your own inner toddler and be like, how would I hold myself if I took myself out of my own body and was my own kid? And can I really begin to reframe my own inner dialogue through that lens? So yes, boundaries versus walls are the things that you are implementing in terms of honoring your worth. Are they conducive to deeper healing, or are they keeping you at a distance to survive and be safe? How can you be your own sense of safety? How can you meet your harshness with grace? Understanding that yes, we can be our own biggest critics, but we also can be our own greatest healers once we recognize that and step into a place of sovereignty and self-empowerment. And life is nothing but confirmation bias. This is so important because the words that we speak over our lives and the things that we think about ourselves, we are going to constantly be affirming through confirmation bias when it comes to how we attract energy. So if you are constantly saying, once again, not to use this example the whole time, but like if you're like, niggas ain't shit, you're going to continue to attract people that affirm that belief, right? So it's so important to recognize the fact that if you're trying to grow in any area of your life, what is your dialogue surrounding it? What is your belief system surrounding it? Because what you notice and where your attention goes and thus the energy flows is going to uphold that belief. So we want to get hyper aware of like our mind. What are we thinking, and how is what we're thinking building our environment and our experience of that environment? You can't bully yourself into betterment. And yeah, is your communication style conducive to what you want for yourself? So if you and that can go both ways. If your communication style is one of that is people pleasing, right? So if you're just used to saying yes before you even hear the terms and conditions, is that conducive to living a life that actually honors your need for rest and play and boundaries? Versus are you someone who's very abrasive and you think that like tough love is the only way to get lessons built through? does that reflect at all how you feel about yourself and how you're treating perhaps your inner child? Really just looking at how am I communicating to others and is it conducive to what I want for myself? But most importantly, how am I communicating to myself? Am I a safe space to retreat home to? If you know that the only permanent home you truly have in this world is your own mind, is it a place you want to live in? Is it kind? And like, me, as someone who just tries to be the most gentle little bear that there ever was, I am so mean to myself, it's ridiculous. And I'm really working on holding myself more softly and not getting, I think my biggest issue is that I really get mad at myself if I feel like I am falling back on old beliefs or old habits or regressing, instead of focusing on how far I've come and recognizing that I cannot regress because I'm no longer in the set of skin that I was the first time that wound surfaced. So like just making sure that you're meeting yourself with as much grace as possible. Like I said, a lot of astrologers are saying to avoid conversations during this full moon because it does have this reactive component to it. But I think that working with anger, working with passion, letting your anger and your passion inform what you no longer want to tolerate is actually conducive to change. So I would say to work with it. But if you find yourself in some sort of disagreement, constantly come back to the question of, is what I'm speaking right now coming from a place of love? That does not mean that it won't be stern, that it won't be grounded, that you won't be speaking on your wants and on your needs, but you can always make sure that, is it coming from a place of malice? Is it coming from a place of vengeance? Or is it coming from a place of love? Love for myself, love for the person, love for the betterment of the situation. Making sure that as long as your words and your needs are being met and given through the lens of love, you deserve to be spoken. You deserve to heard. You deserve to be heard and you deserve to speak. Ooh, girl, I'm fighting for my life right now. So yeah. What are you mad about? This moon in Gemini is aspecting Mars in a way that's so close. You really want to use your anger as information. And like I said, any intentions that you set, anything that you release right now, really let it be informed by everything that you have learned this past year. Take the time to be really reflective and use all of the karmic experiences, all of the endings, all of the beginnings, all of the changes and shifts, be information about, all right, if I, went through all of those breakups or all those changes in job, I know now that like I work better when I'm working for myself, or that I actually don't want someone who doesn't have this kind of communication style, or doesn't honor the fact that I have this kind of communication style. Whatever you have been taught this year, let that inform the intentions that you set or the things that you release under this full moon. If it is coming from an angry place, we deserve to create that space for ourselves, from that anger to run free. As long as it is not causing harm to others. I feel like I try to repress my anger. Abso-fucking-lutely. Anger will manifest as some sort of physical ailment if it is not expressed through the body. So that's why I'm like, don't avoid anger. Like, I don't get why everyone's like, make sure you just close yourself indoors this week because you may feel anger and like we don't want anyone to feel that. Like, no. If I'm feeling angry, it's for a reason. My anger is information. I can't stress enough. It's the most powerful emotion that we have. And so if you're feeling anger, express it. Just make sure that as you are expressing it, that the end goal for why it's being heard is from love, right? For yourself. That means you're holding somebody rightfully accountable. But like the end result is not, I want this person to hurt as much as I'm hurting. The end result is I love so much that I want this anger out of my body. And I want to be able to speak on a boundary that I hadn't had the bravery to speak on before. So let your anger be information. Throwing rocks is a great anger releasing activity. I did a really intense shadow work meditation this morning, and my ancestors came through, and like it was my Spanish ancestors and my African ancestors, and like flamenco is obviously a very culturally significant part of Spanish culture, and then there's obviously so many tribal dances in African culture, and they both have to do with stomping your feet. So I was just with all my ancestors like stomping anger through my feet, and it's the only reason why I'm able to even speak right now, because for the last 2 days I've just been in this weird like emotional space, and then getting it out through stomping was so important. So throwing rocks, stomping your feet, banging on your root space, yelling. Sometimes I just go into my car, honey, and I yell at max volume. listening to a song that generates that kind of energy so that you can sing along and get it out of you, running, however you can move that emotion out of your body in a healthy manner, please do. But also, sometimes the only way to do it is to actually speak it out to the person, to yourself. So know that if you are in the situation where you need to speak it lovingly, but also speak it unwaveringly. Don't dilute your truth for the comfort of others. Work with Mars, because this full moon being in Gemini, aspecting Mars, is such a specific transit that it really is this invitation to let anger be our lighthouse. Let anger show you, oh, there's something here that I don't have the bandwidth to tolerate anymore. Or there's something here that's just calling my notice to it so that I can make a new choice, or I can, break an old pattern, old cycle. You already know what the fuck going on. Otherwise, that is the main gist of it. Are you exercising your throat chakra? Are you speaking on your needs, your boundaries, speaking words in alignment with your growth? Really live the truth that your words are spells, and be hyper aware of what you are speaking over your life, about yourself to others, and to others about yourself. Work with this. I think there's going to be more manifesting opportunity for the new moon that's around Christmas time, but also Mercury will go retrograde. So we'll work with it, but just know that this is more about releasing, getting out of our bodies using this full moon. I would do a burning ritual if I were you. But with that being said, I think the most important takeaway here is you cannot bully yourself into betterment. Be hyper aware of how you're speaking to yourself. If you feel like you're being harsh to yourself, how can you shift that dialogue, and how can you just be a safe space to come back home to? So I'm sending you all my love. Happy full moon. Work with it. If you have any questions or want to look at anything one-on-one, please reach out to me, and I'll see you on the next moon transit. Bye.